Welcome to chapter 2 of the book of Exodus, birth of Moses. It begins, and there was a certain man from out of the tribe, the Felis. Last chapter we had the genus of the race. The word is used in classification of plants and animals, and here we have a Felis. And we have tribe, and we have the word phylum, which comes from that and used in classification. So we have the race of the Jews, of the Hebrews, and then we have the tribe of Levi. Now, remember here, this is way before the law. So Levi was one of the sons of Jacob, and he wasn't a priest at that time. There was no priesthood yet. So this Levi was born in the future for the priesthood, and so that would make Aaron and Moses of the tribe of Levi, of the priestly tribe, but it hasn't happened yet. So all we have is 400 years of these people being in Egypt. And what did they have for a Bible like we have today? We have all these stories going from the Genesis and through the all the history of the Jews until they're taken away, and then Jesus. But these people didn't have very much at all. They had the stories of Genesis, and that's maybe all they were. It may have been an oral law, may never have been written down. We don't know because we don't have that history of it. But so this time, the 400 years, all they had was basically the book of Genesis. And there was basically Noah, Abraham in the fall, Adam and Eve in the fall. And then we had Noah with the flood, destruction of the earth, and it mentions God. And then Abraham is after that, and Abraham spoke to God. And then Abraham had Isaac, and then Isaac, Jacob, the 12 tribes, who were very ungodly men, except for Joseph, maybe Benjamin. So then that was it. So then we have 400 years, and that's a long time. 400 years. Well, it's a long time in history for some nations. The United States, where I live, 76 was the 200 years, so that would have been 17, so 1556 would have been 400 years ago in our bicentennial, and we're right now, we're much later, we're in 2018, but so 400 years goes back in the United States would be the time of the founding of the New World, people coming to the New World. So that's a lot of things have happened between then and now. So the same thing with these people, and all kinds of bad things started happening because it mentions how in the last chapter. So anyway, there was this man, and he took of the daughters of Levi, and so he was of the tribe of Levi, and he took daughters of Levi, so a complete Levite, and had her. Had relations with her and had children, and she conceived in the gastric comes from that, and bore a male. And seeing it as fair, they sheltered it 3 months. The parents, they didn't want to dispose of the male child and put it to death. That's a horrible thing to have hanging over you, that whatever if you bear a male child, then it's going to be put to death. But when they were not able to hide it any longer for whatever reason, his mother took for him a wicker basket of papyru, a thieving, a wicker basket. And papyru, we have this reed material that grows in the marshy areas around the Nile. And it was a reed where they could bend it when it was wet and make baskets out of it, sort of like people have done in many places where there's reeds of some sort growing, and the papyrus plant, the reed was pulled apart, and the fibers was turned into a papyrus paper, which I have shown on previous videos, and which we give with a piece with whenever anybody buys a Bible. And so anyway, this papyrus that was tightly woven and besmeared it with tar. Now, I believe there was a man, Thor Heyerdahl, that made something like this to go across I think it was the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not really sure which ocean it was. And I believe it made it pretty much. I can't remember. This is back in the 1950s or so. And so they made this papyrus boat. And they besmeared it with asphaltopisi. And there we have the word asphalt, and we have the word tar. And papyrus, you can add these two words to your English derivatives book that's available on our website, as we use here, and all these orange numbers refer to words that are in there and gives you more information. So made it waterproof so it would float. And she put the male child into it and put it into the marsh by the river, or to protect the child who was inside. So now we have the child in the river, and his sister, Adelphi, is a derivative for Adelphi. Philadelphia was a city of brotherly love, but Adelphi, Adelphos, a brother and a sister. Sister, that would have been his aunt, spied out Macrothan, far off. Macro comes from that, to learn what would result to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh, Thigatir is another transliteration almost into the English, went down to bathe upon the river, Potamon. And we have the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., means river. And her handmaidens came near unto the river. And apparently the aunt was a handmaiden to the Pharaoh. And she, seeing the wicker basket in the marsh, sent the handmaiden to take it up. And opening, she sees a male child weeping in the wicker basket. Well, this would tear anybody apart, seeing something like that. A little baby that's all by itself. I mean, it breaks your heart when you just see animals. I watch these YouTube videos of these poor bears and different animals. The mother was killed, and the people save them and so forth, and it's heartbreaking. So I would imagine that it would be heartbreaking to see this, to see a little child crying. I mean, how could you get rid of it? And especially a woman. Apparently she didn't have any children, so it says, and the daughter of Pharaoh spared him and said, oh, this one is from the male children of the Ivraon. And his sister, the Adelphi, said to the daughter of Pharaoh, if you want, I will call for you a woman nourishing from out of the Hebrews, and she will suckle for you the male child. And the daughter of Pharaoh said to her, go. And going, the young woman called the mother of the male child, the mitera, maternal comes from that. And the daughter of Pharaoh said to her, oh, carefully keep for me this male child, probably said to the mother, and suckle it for me, and I will give to you the wage. So the baby, by God's miraculous design, was saved from being put to death and taken into the royal household, just as Joseph was done earlier, but here it turns out a little bit different. And the woman took the male child and suckled it, nursed it, and the male child maturing, she brought it to the daughter of Pharaoh. So now it doesn't say how old he was, don't know, and he became to her for a son. So maybe 3, 4, 5, I don't know. And she named his name Moses, Moisin, saying, for from out of the water I took him up. So she gave Moses an Egyptian name. It wasn't a Hebrew name, apparently, although Moses today is a typical name with Jews. And it came to pass in those many days, poly, many, Moses became megas, greater, older, grown up, basically, older. Well, I'm not exactly sure the best word for that, but he went forth to his Adelphus, his brothers of the sons of Israel. And so here I look at it and I'm thinking, well, here's Moses. He is a Jew and probably looked different than the Egyptians of the time, dressed different. Everything was different about him, and these Jews were all slaves. So I was thinking, well, how can you relate that to today? And I was thinking about, well, the African slaves in the New World and the United States were people that were taken by force out of Africa, sold to people that owned them in different places in the world, shipped there, and became a chattel, became a possession, like an automobile, not a human. And this is sort of what was happening to the people of Israel. So now, here, Moses being one of these people that were slaves and looked down upon and everything, because of the fortuitous grace of God, he became part of the royal family and dressed as such. It would be like if a black man, slave, did something good to a master. Let's say it was in here. I'm familiar with the United States. I don't know other places, but South Carolina, Charleston, and the master said, well, he's done this good thing, and so I'm going to make him part of the family. Dressed him up with the family, gave him the name of the family, position that was very powerful over everybody else in South Carolina, in Charleston. And so this black man now has become a powerful person. And then it says, and contemplating their misery. So now, let's say that this black man who was in Charleston went out and went to the neighborhood where all the slaves were, the area where the slaves were, and he saw their misery. And he saw an Egyptian man beating a certain Hebrew of his own brothers of the sons of Israel. It'd be like the black man seeing a white person beating one of the other black people, and he was black, so this is his race, and he couldn't handle it. And looking about here on this side and here on that side, he didn't see anyone. And striking the Egyptian, he hit him in the sand, the body. He hid the body in the sand after killing him, striking him and killing him. So again, that would be like that black man that struck the white man, killed him, and then tried to hide it. And coming forth the second day, he saw two men, Hebrews, skirmishing. It'd be like the black man seeing a couple black men fighting among themselves, which they do, and everybody does. And he says to the one in the wrong, well, why do you beat your neighbor? And that person, that the Hebrew slave said, well, who placed you ruler and magistrate over us? Is it that you want to do away with me also, in which manner you did away yesterday, the Egyptian? So here it says, and Moses feared and said, surely thus this thing has become apparent. Be like the black man that killed a person, but then one of his black brethren snitched on him and to the white people for whatever reason, and he became a marked man. What would the black man do? He would run away to keep from getting killed. So generally in the United States, you'd run out west, especially if you're in Charleston. It's about the only way you could go. And so, but here, apparently Moses went east, either south or east, because it says where he went. Midian. Midian, exactly where Midian is at that time. It shows Midian and Edom over close to the Dead Sea, but not sure if that's the same one or not. But anyway, it says, and Pharaoh heard this thing, and he sought to do away with Moses, the head. Probably wanted to do away with him when the daughter brought him in. But Moses withdrew from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Madian. And coming into the land of Madian, he sat at the well. And to the priest of Madian were 7 Thigateras daughters tending the sheep of their patros, Eothor. Now, if this is a name of the person, or if this was his title, not sure, because we'll see here in a few verses down it changes to a different name. And they came, they came to draw water until they filled the troughs to water the sheep of their father Eothor. Patros, paternal, comes from that. So here we have this well, they drop the bucket down into the well, and then they pull the bucket up and they take the water and dump it out in a trough for the sheep to drink the water. Sheep can't drink, they would die without this. When coming, the shepherds cast them away. But Moses rose up to rescue them, and he drew water for them. Now we have rescue here, and we have save and deliver. There's a difference between the three. To be saved is like a person is drowning, and you pull him up, and he's saved. It's an instant thing. He drowned, saved. It's not he's being saved. He's saved. He's saved. Now, this is not the general Greek word that's used for the word a lot of churches and people use as being saved. That word is to be delivered. It's a verb. It's ongoing, future tense, past tense, action verb. And there is a few places where there was a person being saved, namely when Peter was asked the Lord to come out, walk on the water as Jesus, and started to go under, and the Lord saved me, and Jesus pulled him up. He was saved, put him in the boat. But here, and then delivered is the other one here, is to rescue. And rescue, he rescued them, but the thing can happen again. The situation can occur again, where generally the thing that we were saved was a one-time thing. And he drew water for them and watered their sheep. And they came to Raguel, their father. Now, there's a different name, Raguel. Now, I'm sure the people that are writing this, whoever wrote this, know there's a difference. So now, one probably was the name, and the other, I'm guessing, was the title of this priest, as best I can come up with. Anyway, he said to them, why is it you hasten to come today? Came back early, all these girls with all the sheep. And they said, an Egyptian man rescued us. Anthropology comes from that. From the shepherds, and he drew water for us. Apparently these shepherds were, because there were 7 women, they were able to bully them and push them away and put their sheep in first. So these girls didn't have anybody to protect them, and they had to deal with these brutes. But Moses intervened. He must have been a strong man to intervene and for these people to fear him and not do him in, especially being an Egyptian. And he said to his daughters, and where is he? And why thus have you left the man? You call him indeed that he may eat bread. And Moses settled by the man. So he came, apparently the girls came, said, hey, come on, eat with us. And he, that is the father, handed over Sephora, his daughter, to Moses as wife. And it's the same name as, the Greek name, as the spelling of the one midwife. So this must have been a fairly popular name, Sephora, and but there's different spellings in the King James, but that's the same in the Greek. Doesn't really, I suppose it's not a big deal, but anyway. And conceiving in the womb, Sephora, the wife bore a son. I have woman, but actually a wife. And Moses named his name Gershom, saying that I'm a sojourner, a journeyer in an alien land. And still, again conceiving, she bore a second son and called his name, and he called his name Eliezer, saying that the God of my father, my helper, also rescued me from out of the hand of Pharaoh. Now, apparently Moses learned things about God. He was the God of the fathers, and he was his helper. Now, if you go back in the last chapter in 117, it says that the midwives feared God. Now, what God did they fear? I'm sure it was this God, the God of his fathers, but he didn't know a whole lot about this God. He knew that he appeared to Noah and to Abraham and maybe Jacob, but he didn't have a lot of laws and rules and so forth. If they were not written down. And so, but yet he knew that God was a helper. So, and he rescued me from the, so he gives the credit to God, not Jethro or not luck or good fortune or anything like that, but God, the God of my helper, my helper. He's a helper. And the Muslims today, from what I understand, and other religions, they don't have a personal relationship with God. He's some thing in the far ethereal world or universe, but not somebody that actually comes down and deals with us on a day-to-day, hands-on basis. I believe when I can't find something, Lord, I can't find my glasses. I don't know where they're at. And I used to curse and get mad and yell and scream and beat something and slam things and break things because I couldn't find things. But then when I changed and I said, Lord, I can't find them, whammo, almost instantly I find them, almost all the time. I can't remember having to get mad over being that. And so to me, God helps me find my glasses or whatever I can't find. Now, I could ask somebody else that doesn't believe in God, do you believe that God works in a way that he would help find your glasses? Well, they would laugh at me. Oh, what a stupidest thing in the world. I've never heard of such a thing. God would do something like that. Of course he wouldn't do anything like that. But of course he would. And he helped Moses here. And so now, did Moses learn about God from the midwives earlier? I'm not sure. The midwives and the relationship. It's interesting. Guess we won't find out until later, but he acknowledges God. And then it says, after those many days, the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, came to an end, the one that was over him when he killed the Egyptian, and the sons of Israel groaned. So I don't know how many years, maybe it'll tell us later here, I don't remember. They groaned from the ergonomics, the works, and yelled out. So they're yelling. Who are they yelling out? They're just yelling out. And, it says, and their yell ascended to God because of the works. Now, it doesn't say that they yelled out to God here. They're just groaning and yelling out. So you wonder, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily believe in God and yell out and they have problems. And yet God, I believe, will help them in his choice of who he helps and who he doesn't. If they are yelling out, if they were yelling out to a God that wasn't our God, would our God listen and take that into consideration? It's something to think about and dwell upon. The Muslims yell out to Allah. I don't know if they yell out to him or not, but they acknowledge Allah. Now, if a Muslim is crying out and acknowledging a God higher than they are, even though it's not Christ and they have rejected Christ because it's in the Quran, would God look upon their good deeds of yelling out to a higher being that can help them, even though it's not him? I don't know, but God has his own ways of dealing with all these peoples. I'm certain that the Muslims will not be with Christ because they wouldn't want to be with him now. Why would they be with him later? But where they're going to be, if they are leading a righteous life as a Muslim, I'm not going to say that they couldn't be in a better place than somebody that was leading a devilish, horrible life, mistreating everybody and hating everything to do about God. I believe there's probably going to be a difference between the two. And I believe Jesus mentions things of the people of being a place when they, in the resurrection of the ones believing and the ones that don't believe and so forth. So I believe there's a lot we don't know. But anyway, God listened to their moaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So now whoever's writing this, attributed to Moses, probably was, writes this down as this God is the one that listened to these people yelling out. And God looked upon the sons of Israel, and he was made known to them. Now, how he was made known to them right here, maybe it's talking about the future when Moses comes and tells them about the burning bush and God speaking to them, because that's what we'll be going into next in chapter 3. So, chapter 3, Moses and the burning bush. Hope you'll join us. God bless.